Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Star Wars Prequel Month concludes with Rogue One. So why am I not covering Solo? Two reasons. Main one being there are only 4 Mondays in May. Yeah, hold your laughter for a second as if that made a difference with these releases. But also because Solo isn't really a Star Wars prequel, it's a Han Solo prequel. The distinction is around the fact that we started with A New Hope as the first Star Wars movie ever made. Rogue One is a prequel to A New Hope, thus it is a prequel to Star Wars. Solo, despite being set in the Star Wars universe, is not really about advancing the overall plot of the main Star Wars movies. Rogue One, while not a story that needed to be told, provided the details by which the events of A New Hope could happen at all. They're not necessary to know, but much like the expanded universe itself, it shows that it's a larger galaxy out there, and we don't need to spend all of our time focusing around the same group of people. Solo is just the story of how Han Solo got some of the stuff he had in A New Hope. Solo is not a bad movie at all. It's a completely unnecessary movie, since nobody was clamoring to have a Han Solo movie. Give us our damn Obi-Wan movie for Ewan McGregor already. But it's a fun, enjoyable heist film set in the Star Wars universe. So a few people had a question for me when I announced I was doing this. Which adaptation am I doing? There are 2 comic adaptations of Rogue One, one produced by Marvel and one by IDW. Which shouldn't surprise people really, most of the films have had multiple adaptations. This is especially true of the original trilogy, where Marvel not only adapted all 3 movies as they came out, but had the first ongoing Star Wars series that introduced a lot of weirder stuff in between the movies, similar to Star Trek comics over the years. However, in this case, what people are referring to is that there's an adaptation Marvel did that's like the sequel trilogy ones. 6-issue miniseries covering pretty much everything in the film and then some, but also a considerably shorter printed as graphic novel version that's only 64 pages. Basically the equivalent of only 3 issues. The original trilogy got this same kind of treatment in 2016. The artwork is done in a more cartoony style with scenes compressed more, but getting all the relevant information out to the reader. It's not a bad adaptation style at all, it's just it ends up losing a lot of the finer details that a more straightforward adaptation has. This is really more meant for kids. While it doesn't shy away from the death and destruction, the art style is more appealing for kids to look at and is more easily digestible for a kid reading it for a bit in the afternoon or something. However, since we've traditionally covered the multi-issue adaptations for these reviews, that's what I'll be doing for this episode as well. I don't see a lot of hate for Rogue One out there. Mostly, it's just either a shrug or this is one of the best damn Star Wars movies ever. For me, I like it more than the prequel trilogy, but I feel like it was more interested in having cool characters that could have had a lot of room for expansion in future films. If everybody didn't die at the end. It kind of feels like Rogue One and Solo were 2 opposite sides of the same coin with Star Wars. The former is a war drama, a bit dreary in spots, but about the seriousness of what a war between the Empire and the Rebellion could be like, whereas Solo was a fun sci-fi flick in the vein of Guardians of the Galaxy, featuring charming, funny, interesting characters that show off how colorful Star Wars can be. And that's the great thing about this universe. While I'll groan at how stupid I think Queen Amidala's outfits are, Star Wars has so much room in its universe to be funny, serious, a rainbow of silliness, while also a dour, dirty, gray drama. It's a larger world with room for every kind of story there is. So let's dig into Rogue One, a Star Wars Stories comic adaptation, and see if they can tell a good story with it.
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara. We got Death Star, we got Death Star, we got Death Star, we got
got Death Star. We got Death Star. We got Death Star.
Reading from a trade, no covers, the door's open, let's go! Can't believe I didn't reference that in the Phantom Menace review. Anyway, we open on the planet Lamu 15 years ago. I was gonna make a joke related to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but honestly, just 2 months ago feels like 100 years ago, so yeah. A guy and his wife quickly hide away their daughter, Jin, saying that they do what they have to protect her, giving her the nickname Stardust. An Imperial shuttle lands with a squad of black-clad stormtroopers referred to as Death Troopers.
Are we the baddies?
They're flanking an Imperial officer named Krennic, who's meeting with a guy in an open field. "What is it you want, Krennic? The work has stalled. I need you to come back to the Empire." This is how you know the Empire is evil. They don't let you work from home. His wife, Lyra, pulls a gun and says they won't be taking him. "Of course not, Lyra. I'm taking you all. You, your child, you'll all live in comfort as heroes of the Empire." "You will never win. I will make myself thoroughly uncomfortable while I'm there." Apparently none of the troopers bothered to bring along stun weapons, so they just shoot her dead. Krennic takes the man, Galen, and tells the Death Troopers to find their child. We cut to the present on the planet Edu, where Galen, apparently not having aged a day in 15 years, gotta give the Empire this, their healthcare system is second to none, is talking to a cargo pilot named Bodhi. Bodhi had apparently asked what it was Galen was doing and what it was he was transporting, and the answer does not make him happy. Galen agrees and tells him he has to leave. "But there's still time for us to make this right. You can't unask a question. You can only move forward with what you have learned." "Perhaps, but I still shouldn't have asked what hut porn is like." This scene wasn't in the movie, and probably best it not be. While Galen's lines are perfectly fine, it doesn't really convey any new information that Bodhi's later scenes wouldn't also give. We cut to an Imperial labor camp, where Jin is now grown up, and under a different alias, and getting shoved around by stormtroopers. We have an expanded scene here, where Jin talks to her alien cellmate. "Bad dreams?" "Not really." "Then you shouldn't be up. I mean, I should know. I'm Cthulhu. Do you want a warning before I do it?" "Not really." "I will give you one anyway. Next work crew we are together, I will kill you then." "What if I kill you first?" "Ha ha 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 ha! Then I hope you like a quiet cell, Liana Halleck." Prison gangs in Star Wars are very polite. Sure, you'll still get shivved, but they'll ask if there's a preferred spot so as not to make it extra painful. Back to Bodhi, he arrives on the moon of Jeddah and walks out into the desert, where a group of armed individuals find him and recognize him as an Imperial. However, he announces that he's here to defect, and specifically here with a message for Saw Gerrera. In the movie, we had briefly seen Saw rescuing the young Jin from a hiding spot after the Death Troopers had left, but that scene was left out of the comic. From there, we cut over to the Ring of Caffeine, a trading post where someone from Saw Gerrera's group is meeting with a member of the rebellion, Cassian. He tells Cassian about Bodhi defecting, that he knows why the Empire is mining Kyber crystals from Jeddah, a weapon they're building. Cassian gets rough with the guy because he needs to leave. Saw's group is stealing ammo from the trading post and is worried he'll be left behind. And he finally admits to what kind of weapon it is. "A planet killer! That's what he called it!" "My god, those Transformers were only the first step! They're going to build Unicron!" Actually, that's a good question. Those Star Wars Transformers toys are a real thing, so why didn't we get a Death Star Unicron? That doesn't count. His shouting attracts the attention of some stormtroopers, so to get away, Cassian kills them. Unfortunately, even in a crowded market, gunfire tends to attract more stormtroopers. Cassian plans to climb a wall to get out, but the guy he's talking to has an injured arm and can't climb. As such, Cassian elects to shoot the guy himself. This scene is a bit mixed for me for a few reasons. Firstly, because the comic leaves out the guy wanting to walk and talk instead of just staying in the alley. Cassian was probably right not to discuss this stuff in a crowded area, but at the same time, he's the one who was yelling at him and caused the stormtroopers to come by. In addition, while this scene is also supposed to help establish a kind of deconstruction of the Rebel Alliance, to show off that, hey, they may have been the heroes, but they were also kind of terrorists, and it's an inglorious business, the reason Saw's group isn't part of the rebellion is because they're supposed to be more extremist, employing unethical tactics that the rebellion finds abhorrent. Yet here's one of our heroes committing murder, and in turn, what makes them different from Saw's group if that's the case? It's not that it's bad or anything, it's that the movie seems a bit confused in its messaging. And this is part of Cassian's supposed arc in the film, trying to move away from these unsavory tactics, but it feels a bit hollow since the only remorse he seems to indicate is him just kind of pausing for a second after doing it, but his acting doesn't seem to have the weight it's going for. Back with Jyn, the transport she's on gets attacked by rebels, who are looking specifically for her. They disable her handcuffs, but she's clearly not interested in whatever they're selling, because she kicks their asses and runs out. Right into a large droid, K2SO. Congratulations, you're being rescued. Please do not attempt to resist. This is a weird reboot of the Terminator. K2 is easily the best part of the movie, a snarky, reprogrammed Imperial droid who will tell you what an idiot you are, but still remains loyal and trustworthy. As they take her back to the Yavin 4 base, in a cutscene, she assumes that these guys are a part of Saw's crew, but they say nothing to her in response. Once there, she meets Mon Mothma, and the dialogue is mostly the same, though with additions here or there. My name is Mon Mothma. I sit on the Council of Alliance High Command. It's nice to actually have my scenes in a movie for once. Fun fact, she's actually played by the same actress as in Revenge of the Sith, Genevieve O'Reilly. She introduces her to Cassian, who explains about the Defector and how her father is working on some kind of planet-destroying weapon. Jyn suggests that she doesn't really care, implying that she resents her father for leaving and doesn't actually give a crap about the rebellion or the Empire. However, the rebels instead want her to serve as the foot in the door with Saw Gerrera, since he had raised her for several years after he rescued her. One nice thing the comic does that the movie doesn't is show some flashbacks over narration where we see their last encounter, which seem to be Saw giving her a blaster pistol as a child before leaving. I haven't seen him in years. Gotta tell you, third worst birthday ever. Galen Erso is apparently vital to the weapon's development, and they want to take him and have him appear before the Imperial Senate to provide testimony on the weapon he's building. There's a deleted scene where Bail Organa talks to Mon Mothma about the plan. She still has hope that the Senate will do something about the Emperor. After 20 years? I'm betting the only thing they've ever stopped was when the Emperor wanted to rename Coruscant Palpa Planet, and that's only because they convinced him it'd hurt the brand recognition. I think I've brought this up before, but I do really like how all the post-Disney movies make references to the prequels. I may not like the prequels, but they're still Star Wars, still part of the canon, and they deserve that much respect. As such, seeing Jimmy Smits back as Bail Organa and the same actress for Mon Mothma to provide that continuity link is fantastic. Anyway, Jyn agrees and more formally meets K2, who expresses how he hates how she gets a gun, but he doesn't. You're letting her keep it? The blaster? Are you interested in the probability of her using it against you? It's high. Gotta imagine there's an app out there for people to turn their droid's speech into astromech beeping that's very lucrative. Feels like, especially given what happened with her earlier rescue, that there should have been a scene where she threatens him with the blaster to get away in order to go for more character development later. We also see in flashback that Cassian's superior informs him that with Galen Erso as vital as he is to the weapon development, that his mission is, in reality, to kill him. No attempt at extraction. Placing the flashback here was a neat trick for the adaptation, since it implies that that will be the moment where she tries to shoot him. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually happen. We cut to the Star Destroyer Executrix. You ever look up the names the Empire gave Star Destroyers? A lot of them are quite extra. Oh, I'm sorry, they're extra-ix. Director Krennic is meeting with Governor, soon-to-be Grand Moff, Tarkin. There's a lot of debate about the decision here with the mocap to recreate Peter Cushing for the role. Some find it disrespectful to him as a person to do this. Others point out that Cushing himself was always sad he didn't appear in more Star Wars movies because his character died, and still others just find the CGI to be unconvincing. Personally, when I saw it, I was pretty sold on the CGI on the big screen. Again, we've come a long way since Jar Jar, and nowadays I only really notice it if I'm actively looking for it. The voice for him is okay. I feel like it gets most of Cushing's inflections right, though not enough of the lighter bits that Cushing brought when he wasn't attempting to be super serious.
Charming to the last.
As for the ethics of it, I couldn't say. Cushing's estate was apparently heavily involved in decision-making for the recreation, and it is honestly hard to imagine anyone else playing the role in live action. My only question is, for the authenticity of the performance, did Guy Henry wear slippers during it like Cushing did? Regardless of how you feel about any of that, the comic does not do a great job with him. They kind of smoothed out his face a bit too much here. Kind of made him more of a caricature of Tarkin rather than resembling him like some of the other actors' likenesses. In any case, the point of the meeting is that they're aware of the cargo pilot defecting, and Tarkin is worried about proof of the weapons, yeah, it's the Death Star, no point in me being coy really, existence leaking out and thus getting more star systems to join the Rebel Alliance. In addition, the numerous delays they've had on the Death Star project over the last 2 friggin' decades makes it pretty clear that the Emperor is tired of waiting for it, so they need to test this thing to prove it's ready. As such, they're going to do a limited test on Jedha to solve both problems at once. After that, the comic includes an early introduction to Chirrut and Baze, whom we'll be properly introduced to soon. May the force of others be with you. May the force of others be with you. Oh great, Chirrut's in the wrong thing. He's supposed to be in the Star Wars. Man, I should really get back to that series at some point. Saw Gerrera decides to use tentacle porn to ascertain the truth about Bodhi's story. Yeah, this just seems like a weird inclusion that doesn't really impact the story at all. Thing reads his mind, and then what? At Jedha City, Cassian and Jyn arrive. That contact in Saw's group that Cassian killed, not that he mentions that, had a sister who might serve as an introduction to Saw, so they start looking for her. We'll give her your name and hope that gets us a meeting with Saw. Hope? Rebellions are built on hope. And guns! Don't forget guns! The city's also swarming with stormtroopers, along with a Star Destroyer hanging over it, because of Saw's group attacking the cargo shipment of kyber crystals that they're strip mining from the planet. Chirrut, a blind monk, offers Jyn a glimpse into her future in exchange for the necklace she's wearing. I see a TIE fighter confronting you on a bridge. Wait. No, that doesn't happen. It must have only been for the trailer. What do you know of kyber crystals? My father. He said they powered the Jedi lightsabers. And that if you, glued 2 together, you could make a double-bladed one. Indeed, that's actually canon. Cassian leads Jyn away. Strongest stars have hearts of kyber, although they're not great at nuclear fusion. Cassian explains that Chirrut and Baze are guardians of the Whills, the first time the Whills thing actually made it into any of the movies. So, of course, they never actually explain what the hell they are for any audience member who isn't a colossal nerd like me who has read stuff about the original Star Wars ideas. Anyway, they're basically protectors of the Jedi Temple that was here. Except there's nothing to protect anymore, so they just hang around and offer to glimpse people's futures in exchange for necklaces. Saw's group launches a bombing in the city that takes out an Imperial tank. However, since his little terrorist action is also a risk for them, Cassian shoots some of them before they toss any more grenades, forcing them to flee. Jyn also shoots an Imperial droid that's the same design as K2SO, who shows up behind it. Did you know that wasn't me? Imperial droid! Unfortunately, they cut out some of K2's bits here, but the important thing is that they end up running into more troopers, who assume the 2 are K2's prisoners. However, when the troopers try to take them off his hands, Chirrut shows up and says to let them pass in peace. The Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing. For all is as the Force wills it. Blessed be the unlikely coincidences of the Force. When the troopers try to force him away, he kicks their asses with a stick and the ability to dodge their blaster fire. That being said, Baze still has his back with, a blaster chain gun or something. I don't even know how to describe it. Oh wait, yes I do. Awesome. Chirrut and Baze are sadly the biggest victims of this being a standalone film. Now obviously not everything needs to be a trilogy, but they mostly exist to look cool and do cool stuff without much in the range of character arcs or anything. And in turn, not every character needs an arc, but their presence doesn't really serve much else in the plot other than to be cool. Also, you ever think about the fact that Stormtrooper armor is basically useless? I mean, a dude manages to knock them out with just a wooden stick. Cassian orders K2 back to the ship while Jyn inquires about Chirrut. Is he a Jedi?
No Jedi anymore. Only dreamers like this fool.
You don't know that! There could be a whole expanded universe of Jedi out there! Saw's forces surround and take the 4. Jyn, however, warns them about who she is and that she knew Saw long before any of them. At Saw's base, Cassian meets up with Bodhi, whose mind is still shaken up by the tentacle monster, while Jyn reunites with Saw. Once again, the comic makes good use of flashback over their dialogue to basically tell how things went down. Saw left Jyn behind at the age of 16, giving her only a knife and a blaster to defend herself. Some of his forces were catching wind of the fact that she was the daughter of an Imperial officer and wanted to use her as a hostage. So instead, he elected to leave her behind. She's naturally bitter about all this, but says her job is done. She's only there to make the introduction, not fight for the cause. The soldier I trained was a true believer. You saw our enemy with unclouded eyes. What happened to the girl who was willing to die for the rebellion? Well, gee, Saw, maybe that girl got left behind by her only remaining parental influence, while she probably already had abandonment issues stemming from losing her birth parents to the Empire at a young age. God, this franchise has a lot of bad father figures in it. The Alliance, the Rebels, whatever it is you're calling yourselves these days, all it's ever brought me is pain. You can stand to see the Imperial flag reign across the galaxy? It's not a problem if you don't look up. Jyn actually has a pretty good character arc for the movie. It's just Felicity Jones is underplaying it a little too much. Not to the extremes of the prequel trilogy, but even when she has an emotional breakdown in a moment, it comes across as too restrained. It's not bad, just not as good, if that makes any sense. As Krennic oversees the test firing of the Death Star on Jedha City, Saw shows Jyn the message from her father. He expresses his love for her, but also what he's been doing the last 15 years. He knew that his refusal to work on the Death Star would mean nothing, because sooner or later, someone on the team would figure out that they didn't actually need him to complete the project. So instead, he lied, pretended to be broken and beaten down into obedience, but in reality was working on implanting a weakness in it. Jyn, if you're listening, my beloved, so much of my life has been wasted. I spent years on that whole phase where I claimed to be into Magic the Gathering, but never actually played it. He explains that he's placed a flaw on the Death Star's reactor systems. It's unstable, so a blast to any part of it will set off a chain reaction that destroys it. Still not sure if it's going to generate a shockwave when it explodes or not. That uncertainty is keeping me up at night. He says they'll need the structural plans of the Death Star to find the reactor, with said plans located in the Empire's data vault on the planet Scarif. Jedha City is destroyed, and even using the Death Star at that little power causes the surrounding area to kick up dust storms and earthquakes, threatening Saw's base. Our heroes escape their cell with Bodhi, finding Jyn and Saw as the members of his terrorist band flee. Cassian says he knows where her father is, and they invite Saw to come with, but he says he won't be running any longer. The comic, unfortunately, doesn't really do a good job of portraying what's up. While the implication is that Saw doesn't think he can keep up because he basically has the Star Wars equivalent of a peg leg, really it seems to be more that he's just tired of the fight, broken and beaten down by the whole thing. The comic left out a few more of his paranoid ramblings and statements that he made that seemed to indicate his psyche was not in great shape. I think that's what I've come to realize about this film. It's a movie that's better on a rewatch than it is the first time you see it. Some movies it's harder to pick up on details during the first watch-through. Your attention isn't on everything. Some aspects are more subtle, and since it's something you're seeing for the first time, you're not absorbing everything that's happening. And that's the case with this film. Saw's characterization makes a lot more sense to me the third time through. The comic does help with that with the flashback panels, just a pity they left out some bits too. Anyway, K2 rescues our merry band, now made up of Jyn, Cassian, Bodhi, Chirrut, and Baze. Oh, and the comic also makes a reference to Saw's sister, Steela. Yeah, the character actually originated in that Clone Wars cartoon that everyone wants me to watch, alongside his sister. So there's some trivia for you right before he meets his untimely end. Cassian elects to jump to light speed before making the calculations to avoid the city's blast. Honestly, with decisions like that, it's surprising we haven't ended up with more Holdo maneuvers in the Star Wars universe. Cassian sets course for the planet Edu, while Bodhi laments the situation, what with Galen having told him that this was a way to make amends for his own small part in creating the Death Star, now seemingly for nothing since the weapon has clearly been completed. However, Jyn takes a step up and says that thanks to her father's message, they know what the Death Star is, and that there is a way to destroy it. Unfortunately, since they didn't have time to grab Galen's message, Cassian says they won't have proof, and it'll be hard to convince the Alliance about all this. Jyn suggests finding Galen and bringing him back to tell the Alliance himself, which seems odd that they're suggesting this now after they already started on their way to where he is. On board the Death Star, Tarkin says that now that the weapon is proven effective, he's taking control of it. Krennic objects, since this is his achievement, but Tarkin says that the recent security breaches prove that Krennic isn't up to the job, pointing out that the defector came from Galen Erso's facility on Edu. They reach the facility, but because they need to fly low away from the scanners and there's a lot of wind and rain, they end up crashing their ship. Somehow the rebels were tracking them, but once it crashes, they lose the signal. As such, they elect to launch a squadron of X-Wings to attack the facility and hopefully kill him that way. This is kind of a bizarre decision chain in the movie, since in the film, Cassian already sent a coded message to the rebels confirming the existence of the weapon and the defector, so what does killing Galen at this point accomplish? Cassian goes out with Bodhi to scout out how things look out there. After they've left, Chirrut has a question and observation, wondering if Cassian looks like a killer. What do you mean, does he look like a killer? The Force moves darkly near a creature that's about to kill. You don't want to know what the Force looked like when Obi-Wan Kenobi shot General Grievous a bunch of times.
No one brings it worse in this fucking universe.
Rebel